Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the Animals in Quarantine, a Big Light podcast. A 3-part series where the members of the band get together to discuss our new record, Ships. My name's Jeremy Korpas, I play lead guitar for the band Big Light, and I'll be your host for the next 3 episodes. For our second episode of the series, I sit down with Big Light's bass player and background singer, Steve Adams. Alright, it's me and Stevie sitting here talking through the internet during quarantine day 29. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I have it clocked at day 26, but maybe
26?
Yeah.
It's funny. Me and Fred had it clocked at 28 yesterday. So
me and Tia have been keeping track since day one, but our day one might be different.
Right on. Well, long enough.
Yeah, it's practically a month, which is crazy.
Yeah. So our whole plan and goal here is to try to just help people understand what Ships is all about. It's an unconventional record made during an unconventional period for the band, and now we're going to try to release it in an unconventional manner. A band that doesn't really have any aspirations of being a band anymore, except to just make music to make music. So why don't you tell everybody how Ships got started for you?
Yeah. And I'm not sure. I feel, just to touch on something you just said, I feel like there is a little bit of an aspiration to be a band, in a sense. I mean, probably what you're referring to is just the traditional sense of like, let's go out and go for it and tour all the time, and that's maybe not quite what we're looking at. But
no, I think you're right, and I think what this all is, or maybe the last 2 years of us making music, is just trying to figure out what that means.
Yeah.
What is being in a band at 40 plus years old, for people who have jobs and lives and all that kind of stuff? What does that mean, or how do you do that and still show people, or try to get people to care, really?
Yeah, and also create some sort of even if it's sort of scaled a certain way, some sort of success to make it sustainable. But success obviously is super relative. But in whatever way to make it sustainable, where we all enjoy showing up to a rehearsal and all enjoy showing up to a gig, and we all get on a call together and we're stoked to talk about a release that is very different for most bands, this release in particular. But so Ships for me was kind of just it kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. I think I was mentioning before we got cut off, but we were all kind of in different places, and Big Light wasn't really working a whole lot. And I think Fred had the inspiration to go into the studio and record some songs that he had kicking around. So he went ahead and just did that. And then I think as time passed, he just kind of one by one sort of invited us to come in and add stuff to it. And I think over that course of time, he realized that there's no reason not to call it a Big Light record, because it pretty much features all 4 of us from the band on the record. So we didn't go in as a band and to go make a record. I think it just came from Freddie, sort of like getting it going and then inviting us in, and then we blinked and we had a Big Light record.
Yeah, if you talking to him yesterday, the way he kind of describes it is he had this batch of tunes and he wanted to start recording and stuff like that, and he did some early sessions with D-Bar and Cochran as his rhythm section, which yielded some usable results and some results that I don't think he was vibing with. And then I think he kind of maybe went back to the drawing board with it a little bit more, and him and Black had discussed maybe a newer direction of this record, and eventually it kind of morphed into having everybody come on. I think he had said you had come down and had started doing vocals, and I think you were the first of the 3 of us to come down and start making his mark on it.
He was making the record out at Panoramic in Stinson, which is a killer studio. It's like you can you get out there. It's like an hour from the city or whatever, and you get out to that coastline. And you're pretty secluded from everything, and it's that house that you. It's got rooms that you can sleep in, and the control room and the tracking, the main tracking room and everything. It's all just it's one roof. The kitchen, and so you kind of get out there and you want to be there for a few days. So Fred was making the record out there with Black, and he invited me to come out and spend a couple days with him and just see what happened. And I barely remember doing any synth, but when I was listening back to the record, I did hear some stuff that I was like, oh, maybe that was the synth he was talking about that I did. But I do remember doing vocals, and I remember getting into it with vocals, and that's something that I've kind of been part of the Big Light experience or the Big Light project. I've always sort of stuck around to do some background vocals on that record. That the last record, the Well Wishers record, I wasn't really in the band, but I came down and did some backup vocals. And that's sort of what I did on this record too. Is I did a bunch of backup vocals.
I mean, that's probably one of the more integral parts of the Big Light sound is you and Freddie singing together.
Yeah,
So,
I
you know,
love singing with Fred. I mean, he's one of my favorite people to sing with. Really easy to follow, and he's a great singer. He's kind of an unusual singer, the way he pronounces words and the way he comes up with melodies and stretches words. He kind of stretches in an interesting way. But I've gotten to become pretty familiar with it, and I feel like I can kind of like tag along on his vocals pretty effortlessly these days.
so when you were listening to this record recently, what was it like to not hear yourself playing bass on a Big Light record? To
Well,
hear
I'd
somebody
already heard
else?
it once because Well
Oh, right,
Wishers had
Well Wishes, right?
Friedman on bass, and and D-Bar. I've heard D-Bar a bunch with Fred, and D-Bar and I kind of approach bass pretty similar, I would say, in some ways. We both go for kind of a rootsy P bass tone. Um, he's been doing a little more pick, and I think there's probably some pick playing on this record from what I heard. And I think there's another, isn't Alexi? Isn't he also playing some bass?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure of the full track listing on everything on who really contributed what. I think just like you had said before, every time I listen to it, I come across something that I go, oh right, I recorded that part, or
right.
I think that's my guitar,
Yeah,
or I
kind of
think
like
yeah.
it sounds familiar, and you're like, wait, I think that is me. And I can hear you and Bradley pretty clear. I mean, I probably haven't heard everything you've done, maybe, but I've definitely heard moments where I'm like, that's clearly Jeremy. I can tell, and I can tell that's Bradley. And
I mean, I was definitely trying to make my mark on that record for sure.
yeah,
When I was there, it was Fred and I weren't really talking at all at that point. We had
yeah,
we had made amends, but we hadn't really. We weren't like friends. We weren't hanging out or anything like that. And then when he had asked me to do the record or come to the studio, uh, you know, at first I just said yes because I wanted to see that studio. Um, and then yeah, and just to hang a little bit. But when I got there, my initial impressions of whatever they had done before that was a little sloppy and didn't have much direction, and knew I had only so much time, to work
you
when I
worked
got there.
at Panoramic also is where you were doing your stuff.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
went. Yeah, I was there for 24 hours. I spent one night and did, I think, and in the 24 hours, I think I did about, including sleeping and eating, did about 18 hours of recording time in that day. So it
yeah,
really drilled it kind of tough, but was trying to like, I had felt like in that moment that I use this term loosely, but like with the music that Fred was presenting, I thought was a little messy.
yeah,
And I had just felt like it was a time to like, okay, here you can really start guiding these things in a direction, putting your fingerprint on it, and kind of making it a little bit more Big Light. I don't know if that was really the goal at the time to make it Big Light, but
yeah,
I remember thinking like, all right, well, these need help, and you can make a lasting impression on these tunes.
yeah. I mean, I remember walking away and being like, I don't know if they're going to use any of that, or because it was kind of Fred, and it turned into Fred and Jeremy sort of just like at the helm of the whole thing. And they were deconstructing Cochrane, and they were deconstructing D-Bar, and they were deconstructing everything. And the album is like, it's almost a remix of many different sessions. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just as much a Jeremy Black record as it is a Big Light record, or even Fred's record.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
I mean, even probably just the Half Trained ear, you can listen to that record and just hear that it's just an editing. You know, it sounds like an editing, just to put it all together seems like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting at. I'm sure his sessions just look like lots of bits and pieces that he was putting together and trying to create something out of whatever they had before that.
I love the moments in the record where the whole track just gets affected as a piece. Like there's some tune that kind of speeds up at the very end, and or it like goes higher in pitch or something, but everything goes with it. It's like everything just kind of gets turned.
It's like an old DJ trick, right? Where you affect the whole thing, where they'll do the low pass filters and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and then drop the bass, and then Tame Impala had done that on one of their records, and I had actually heard them doing it live too, where at certain points they would take the entire mix and phase it for 8 bars,
Right.
where the whole room would just go through a phaser and then drop it back and create these things. So,
And that's something
which I thought
the sound guy would be doing or something. Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was definitely done at the board.
Yeah.
I mean, it was planned, but that's his move. Nobody on stage is making that move. And yeah, some of those moments, I remember at that point, hearing Tame Impala doing it and thinking like, that's the next trick.
Yeah.
That's the next one, is where you just take the whole mix and just
Yeah.
twist it. And
Yeah, it's not a guitar part that sort of spins off and everything keeps going. It's like the whole
No.
thing spins off and then snaps
Right.
back, and it's pretty. Yeah, I could see how maybe it started out pretty loose, like you're saying. I heard a little bit of that the early versions of things. Yeah, I could see like taking all that loose stuff and then just Jeremy Black just kind of tightening it all up eventually.
Right. And I think the first time you hear some of those moves on the record, it's a little jarring because it's unique and you're just not used to hearing stuff like that. But
Yeah.
the more and more I hear them as artistic choices that I think make or break that kind of record. I don't think it's not a rock record, so you have to keep it. You have to keep the ear interested in a way. That you can't do without drums, bass, and guitar. So, kudos to Black for really making a lot out of probably wasn't much at the time.
Yeah, I mean everybody that Fred brought in, including Big Light.
All right, we're back after a weird little digital glitch. Stevie was talking about Freddie bringing in a bunch of different people to come down and play on this record, and he had something to say about that.
Well, we were talking about how the record, I mean, maybe part of the story of this record is how it started off kind of loose and like sort of searching for its way. And I think as more people came down to play on the record, it started taking shape and tightening up. And I think you were talking about that, Jeremy, just how you felt like you wanted to personally tighten a few things up yourself, or at least help it along its way. But I think that's what naturally happened. And I think, and I was just going to say that how I feel like everybody in Big Light, I mean, that's kind of how we operate as a band a lot of times, is we sort of edit each other and we help each other tighten up parts. And so I think we all just kind of brought that in to Fred's process, and I think it helped the record get to where it is. I mean, obviously we were talking about Jeremy Black a lot and his influence on the record, but I feel like everybody's contribution kind of helped bring it to like a tight place. And it still has that loose feel, I feel like, in it, because I think there's pieces that are loose, which is good. I mean, you want that.
Yeah, it sounds like Big Light to me.
Yeah, it does.
I think Black had said the same thing to Freddie too. I think after they had maybe they were done tracking everything and gotten together and started mixing and going through all the tracks that they had. I think Black might have even pushed Fred a little bit in that direction of just kind of just being like, this is a Big Light record now, more than just like, whatever, a Fred Torfey solo record or whatever he was trying to go for at the time.
Yeah.
Do you like the record?
I think it's awesome. And I think it sounds like Big Light. I mean, and I think it does because, obviously the thing that's in the forefront is Fred's voice. And that's always kind of been in the forefront on all the Big Light records. So you hear that and you're like, oh, this sounds like Big Light. But then
I think it kind of carries. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I think you're nailing it. I think Big Light. Big Light's had a lot of different little versions of itself. We had joked yesterday about Big Light 2.0 of me joining the band, but I don't even know if that would be even considered 2.0. It might even be like 4.0 or 5.0 at that point.
I would call. I'm not sure the different chapters, but I would call you definitely when you came in, it solidified a unit that stayed together for a good while.
Right.
And before you, it was honestly a revolving door of musicians. And there was a version of it before I even joined too. I was part of the revolving door, but I kind of stuck around.
Right. I guess the point that I'm trying to make with this is that it seems like the one consistent thing, the only consistent thing you can kind of tie all of those records and all of those different iterations of the band is probably just Fred's voice. I think Fred, as a musician, as a guitar player and a songwriter, has been forced to change. He's been forced to have to morph himself with the people that he works with. I know that happened when I started working with him. It definitely happened when he started working with Mark Friedman. Mm-hmm. And I think even on this record of him working maybe a little bit more by himself, and then with Black, you get something completely different than anything he's done in the past. And I think the main thing is just that it's Fred Torfey's voice on top of it all. I mean, they're his songs.
Yeah. And he's got a certain songwriting style too, and he's got a certain lyrical style, and I think that's all continuing in a. That's been pretty consistent from one record to the next, from the beginning to now. So you hear that, yeah, and then I think, you've been in the band since, Animals in Bloom, I guess, right?
I mean, I joined, basically April, May of 2009.
Yeah.
Right around that time, right before summer had started, and we had hit that festival season.
Yeah, I was looking back through like old archives folders of photographs and stuff, and I saw a bunch of photographs from Coyote Hearing. It was Hoops and not you. It was like me, Brad, Fred, and Hoops and Tim Bloom, and I think that was a pre-production session.
No, my memory of that was
I could tell we were recording or getting ready to record Animals in Bloom, and I was like, "Where's Jeremy? Isn't he on that record?"
Oh no! From my memory of it, I think that was probably initially supposed to be the beginning of what eventually turned into being Animals in Bloom.
Yeah.
I definitely think I remember kind of trying to force the whole concept of maybe having Tim Bloom there out.
Yeah.
Nothing against Tim Bloom, but I just didn't think that there was anything on that record that we couldn't piece out ourselves. I didn't think we needed an outside voice to come in and tell us what we should be playing or not playing.
Yeah. Right? So did we come back to Coyote then, and we did?
Yeah, and I think the Coyote sessions that you guys had done before I had joined the band. I think there's probably a long gap between those recordings too. I think those recordings had been done long before I might have even moved to San Francisco. So we're talking about November of 2008, me joining the band in let's say May of 2009. Mm-hmm. And we were tracking Animals in Bloom I don't by what less than 6 months or 7 months or 8 months after that, right? It seems like right
Yeah,
around that.
I
Yeah.
feel like you got a better understanding of the timeline than I do, but
Well, I just remember we did that summer, and we played a lot of festivals, and we did outside lands and stuff like that. And
yep,
I remember personally just being like, well, this is all for nothing if we don't have a product to push.
yeah.
We've got no record. We have no voice right now as a band. I don't think anybody disagreed with that either.
And we redid songs that were on the first EP. We redid Heavy and Bonebreaker.
Yeah,
Those are
and
both
you know, if
on Animals in Bloom.
all right, Digital Glitch Part 3, we're back. We were talking about the making of Animals in Bloom and how we got there.
Yeah.
Right, I forgot my train of thought.
Well, we were trying to piece it all together because I feel like okay, yeah, just kind of reflecting on how Animals in Bloom had a couple tracks that we recorded, or Fred and Jamie and Bradley and Hoops recorded for that first EP, Heavy and Bonebreaker. We re-recorded those, but I think we re-recorded those because we wanted to get like a little more hi-fi version of those songs, and also have your voice on those songs because we were playing them a lot live, like you were just saying, because we hit that summer touring and we were kind of gelling as a band.
Right. Yeah, I was never. I don't think I was ever really quite a fan of that first EP. Not because I wasn't on it. I just thought it felt a little sloppy.
Yeah. Coming back to that,
Yeah.
it was. I recorded two. I'm on 2 tracks on that EP, and I remember going down there. They were at the old their rehearsal space, and imagine making a record at like a rehearsal space that's in like a building with a bunch of other rehearsal spaces.
Right.
But what's it called? In Oakland, Soundwave.
Soundwave Studios.
I mean, their rehearsal spot was like 2 doors in from the parking lot, and it was a tiny little room, and they were making the record in there. And I had just kind of like met up with those guys, and they said, "Come down, we're making this record, and you should play on a couple tracks." And so I went down and played on 2 tracks, 2 or 3. And then that EP came out, and I think I'd only even played with them once or twice live, but I was just starting to hang out with them. And it was loose. It was a loose. It was a loose setup.
I think Big Light. That's a good term to describe Big Light's music. Just I think in general.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty, to say it lightly, stony situation when we get together. And I think the stoniness kind of like lightens things up. It loosens the grip on things. I mean, it loosens my grip. You know, it just as my personality, it tends to want to just grasp everything really hard and have control of it. So I know that I have to loosen myself up, and I'm sure everybody has to give up a little bit of control.
I feel like in the band, there's moments where one of us, or a couple of us, or a few of us are like in the zone, and we know what we're doing, and we know what's happening next. I'd say most of the time there's at least one person that's a little bit like sort of outside that, but there's times when all 4 of us are there. But I've learned what I love about the band is I love making music with you guys. I love hanging out with you guys, and I love making music with you guys. And I've come to terms with like, I'm not really ever gonna judge too hard whether it's too loose or too tight or whatever. It's kind of like you just sort of like let everyone be themselves, and whatever it is, that's what it is that moment. And I feel like I just kind of like put the responsibility on everybody there to do their best. And I know there's moments where I'm not going to be my best, and I appreciate that I don't get, fined for that or kicked out.
We really early on in our, or at least when I joined the band, we learned to just like not harp on mistakes because there's going to be 10,000 more of them a night.
Yeah.
And I think I think a lot of those shows probably were, in those moments. It was they were as good as the four of us were playing together.
Well, that summer
that night.
when we got you in the band, and I feel like when you got in the band, you brought in some discipline, which, as much as I love the looseness and as much as I love the freedom, a little bit of like structure and agreement about what we're doing is good. And I feel like you did a good job being that role. And I kind of would be that role sometimes also. And everyone kind of does in their own way. But I feel like that summer when we started playing with you is when the band really started getting good. And when you get a lot of shows under your belt, that's just it's all going to sort of slide to the middle, and you're all going to be, working at your top potential.
Yeah, I think it was just I had worked 2 gigs with Big Light before I joined the band. One gig was a gig at Café du Nord, and this is when Big Light was still like a 10-piece or 12-piece or something like that. Fred had me
Big
there
Light
to
Orchestra.
be like something like that. Fred had hired me to be crew, and I didn't do shit. Chris Joseph was so mad that I was even on the list. He couldn't even believe that I got in for free. But and you guys had played, and it was a good show, and everybody had fun and stuff like that. And at the end of the night, Chris Joseph comes over to me and says, he's like, what did you think? Like, kind of thinking that I was going to sit there and just be like, oh, tonight was great. And I was like, it was a fucking mess. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, there was 10 people on stage, and all 10 people were playing everything all of the time. Everybody just played everything all of the time. And it was like, okay, this is not, I don't think that's a good show for a band when everybody's just loosely doing everything. And then the next time I worked for you guys, it was after Fred had made some changes in the band, and it had slimmed down to the 4-piece with like you, I think, and Hoops on keys and Fred and Bradley. And I did sound for you guys at you guys were opening up for the Mother Hips somewhere up north. I did sound for you that night, and you guys put on the most boring concert I'd seen in ages. And after the show, CJ had come up to me and he's like, well, what'd you think? And I was like, that was the most boring concert in the world because nobody played anything. Nobody played anything. So I remember my kind of feeling like, okay, well, we need to like have everybody have a role in a song, and let's add some fucking life to this shit too at the same time.
Yeah.
I felt like that was what my role was. I don't think that was why I was hired, but I felt like that was why what I felt like I needed to do to make it move forward. Not to say that it was right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think bringing in some of that discipline, especially when in rehearsals and stuff, where you're just kind of like, you all get there and then you all start, all of us just start playing. And then like 20 minutes goes by and you're like, what are we doing? Like, that was cool. Like, what are we doing? Like, like anyone got a song they want to do? And just having someone like you, like, being like, hey, let's do Easy Friend. Let's work on it. Like, let's like look at that first verse. Like, is it cool? Like, what does it need or whatever? And it was nice. It was refreshing to have a little bit of a, just someone sort of taking the rein a little bit at times. And you did a great job of also just letting it be what it is, because there's beauty in that too, and I think that.
I mean, I think part of the charm of Big Light, this sounds so self-serving as we're sitting here telling each other about how great we are, but I think maybe one of the things that I think maybe is why people still come out is that there's still our personalities still come out on stage.
Yeah.
I think who we are as people off the stage is who we are on the stage. I think all our personalities show for sure. And I think people connect with that. I mean, we're not the best band in the world by any stretch of the imagination, So to have people, I think it's honest. I think the honesty comes through, and I'm happy that it comes through, or at least I think it comes through.
Yeah, it feels very honest, genuine. Yeah.
So me and Fred were talking about the future of Big Light.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you've got in store? What do you think Big Light should be doing in the near future? What do you think we should?
like
try to go for
like
here.
a band conference call question. Well, I mean, so yeah, it's interesting to kind of zoom out and look at all the different moments in Big Light, and then to like sort of zoom into like right now. The band in general, we've been sort of picking, like a few shows a year to do, and we always kind of do one around your birthday and Bradley's birthday in the winter, and then we see if we can get a couple others in there, and I think that's awesome, and I think that serves the purpose of keeping the music alive with our fan base, which is essentially our friends. But I think we have probably a little spillover into people we don't know too that like the band. But we have certainly our friends are a big part of our fan base, which is the case for most bands in general. And they're often starting out and whatnot. But I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm not sure exactly what. I mean, I would love to continue to do those sort of like annual gigs that we have been doing. And I think one of the fun things about Big Light is we'll get together and rehearse when there's not a gig. And just because we want to see each other, we want to play music, and we want to keep those songs sort of dusted off, the old songs, and maybe try a couple new ones. I love that retreat we did out in Santa Cruz, and that would be amazing to do another retreat where we hang out and just, have fun, mess around with stuff, ideas. In fact, I think it'd be awesome to look at how to make another record where maybe we do get everybody in the same room to like track together. So I don't know. I mean, I think keeping the ball rolling, we've kind of kept the ball rolling, and it's never been too ambitious in what it's tried to do, but maybe there'll be a moment where there's a little more demand or people want us to do something. And I love playing live with the band. I love that summer we did a bunch of festivals. I would do that again. We're all a little older. We all have different commitments in life, but we all have a calendar that we can like.
Yeah, and I think some of the fun of it is trying to piece it all together too.
Yeah,
just trying to figure our adult lives out with being in a childhood rock band just to play music for fun. I think that's part of the fun, is piecing it together and seeing if we can make it work.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the excitement when all four of us say, "I can do Tuesday night," and then we go, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. So
yeah,
I would hope that we could clearly get in a studio as a unit for a couple of days to make songs. In the current climate with this virus, I'm not quite sure.
I don't know when we're going to really see each other or be in a room together. I mean, I expect it won't be too long, but
no, I don't think it's going to be that long. But I would say it's probably going to be another half a year before we can really start comfortably going out and being normal again.
Like concerts and shows. I mean, I would love to kind of. As soon as we can get together, even if it's just the four of us, and if we're a little socially distanced or whatever, and like cautious or careful, it'd be fun to get together and start working on playing some of these tunes, because I think it'd be interesting to see how we could make these songs come to life live. I mean,
sure,
that'd be cool, and it'd be cool to work on the ones that we've been working on already and record some of those, and to keep working on unknown new stuff.
I mean, every time I listen to The Ships, which has been a couple of times this week leading up to these interviews, my brain instantly goes into like dissection mode.
How can I do that?
I'll probably play that sound.
Yeah.
Maybe Steve will have to cover that little thing there with distortion, because I'll be playing, trying to arrange it in my head and just kind of map it out for us in the future.
We were doing Molly Yellow.
Yeah. Yeah, which is done. I mean, we played it live, so we've got that one. I think, like we were saying, at first listen to that record, it sounds kind of untouchable a little bit because of all the bleeps and the blops on it.
Yeah.
But the more I listen to it, the more I realize, like, oh, this is totally doable.
Yeah.
Totally be able to pull this off live as a 4-piece, or hopefully with Jeff on keys as a 5-piece.
Yeah, I mean, nice
he
to have
can make
Coleman
those
in the mix. He's the
Yeah.
secret weapon 5th member.
Right. I mean, well, this is the story of piecing Big Light together. You know, kids, families, jobs, other bands, reality, life.
I mean, I think
all part
it's
of the
really,
story.
I think it's sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to look back at the first EP and just sort of like the genesis of the band, like with Fred and Jamie. Like, what were they? Were they like hometown buddies or college buddies or
No, I think they grew up in the exact same town. That
in
little
Rhode Island?
Yeah, Fred's from a town called Little Compton, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And it is as far away from anything else in this world.
I've been to his parents' house.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there.
So those two guys kind of started it out, and I think got Brad in the mix pretty quickly. And so when I first saw them, I was friends with Melissa, and she was roommates with Fred. And Melissa was like, "You should come see my roommate Fred's band. Like, they're awesome. You'd love them." And so I was like, "Sure." So I went and saw them. I think she was even being like, "You should sit in with them." And I'm like, "I'm not going to sit in with them the first time I see him." But that did happen. I don't know why or how, but they also, Fred and Jamie were switching off playing bass. So they didn't have a bass player. They just would like pass the bass back and forth.
God, I bet they would have just let you play the whole show if you wanted to.
I know. I think I almost did. I think I played like 4 songs in
Right.
Makeout Room. And then after that, it just was like, "Hey, do you want to come back out and do another gig? We got one lined up." I was like, "Sure."
Yeah, Stevie was basically, we're going to try to wrap this up for everybody. I know this is probably going to sound choppy when you listen to it, and we apologize, but thanks for sticking in there. So Stevie, just wrap up how you feel about Big Lights, where we are as a band right now.
Well, I mean, it's a weird time in the world, and you know, we're all isolated in our own homes and very limited access to the outside world and limited access to each other. So it's a weird time for us individually. It's a weird time for us in the band, and it's kind of a weird time to release a record, but it's maybe the perfect time to release a record just because everyone's just home with, you know, trying to find ways to entertain themselves and entertain their families and find some meaning in life and find some beauty in art and all that stuff. And so maybe it's the perfect time for a record. And I hope people give it a spin and maybe multiple spins and enjoy it and check it out and get into it. And I'm excited for getting the band back together when we can, playing some of these songs live and reconnecting with our community. And I appreciate all the work that the guys in the band have done to get this record out to everybody. So, yeah, crazy time, but I'm glad we have a record to offer people.
Well, me too. Well, that's a great way to wrap things up. And I appreciate you doing this, Stevie. I love making music with you. I love calling you my friend. I love any chance we get to just do anything together. So thanks for sticking it out, you know?
Yeah. Jeremy, I know you and I are both going to be pushing for a vinyl release, so
Yeah. For sure.
let's hope we can get that out maybe at some point this year, or we'll see how soon. But thanks for chatting.
Great. All right. I love you, buddy.
Love you too, man. Thanks.